What is going on, you guys? It's your boy, the Fish Bitch, here, and we are back with episode 160 of the Video Game Therapy series. It has been a while, but I am not sorry because you shouldn't be on the internet anymore. Um, I honestly I haven't really done one of these in a while, mostly because I feel like I've gotten a lot of my social energy out of my system. Just with my living arrangements and just with my life now, I get a lot of sociality beyond myself. And I really leaned more heavily on this series when I felt uh, like I had a lot of solitude time. And actually, this could be taken in a different way. I think part of the reason we don't do these as often is only because I've had less time to reflect and less need to share my opinions because I've been generating fewer of them. Only because I've been more, maybe even distracted, we'll say. But that only assumes that the priority for me is to make these videos, which it's not. Something that I feel needs to be restated again for probably the 100th time at this point is just people that, or not even say people, I'm just going to accuse the entire populace of this. Not even myself included, because I think I've sufficiently got myself out of this category of person, but the category of person that thinks that they are smarter or somehow able to outbias the quite literal trillions of dollars of technology that they hold in their hand. Like people that consume Instagram Reels or just essentially are on the internet often. Really, there's one of two things that is going on in my estimation. Either one, the companies that are promoting whatever videos or whatever crap is on their platform is doing so purely out of a financial interest and have no ulterior motives. And to that, and that's kind of the more likely scenario in the sense that I don't think that there is any kind of op with some of this brain rot stuff. Because I mean, you hear every like week on the news, it's some new like ridiculous fad that has taken the youth by storm, and then by the time the Boomer CNN or Fox has covered it, like it's pretty much old news at this point. Like I wouldn't be surprised if they're just now covering fucking the Nyan cat or something. Um, uh, yeah, it's literally like so far behind. But really, yeah. So either one thing that the companies like Meta, I'll even say, is promoting things on the basis of just engagement, which would actually be the good outcome. So that just shows that like what is being shown to people and what people are consuming is quite literally just like a random, random assortment of whatever people can't not make themselves watch for longer. Because it's not even like people like seek out. And I don't know if you have people like have friends in your life that are I'll say brain rotted or just spend copious amounts of time on the internet, but it's never anything that you would that our ancestors would have believed we would. Even if we were able to convince them of this technology we created, nobody in their right mind would ever have believed that we would use it to watch like videos of people like way stranger than us doing weird things or just habits and other like almost inhuman things that humans subject themselves to for attention. um it would just be odd, and it would be like almost counterproductive. And why are we wasting all of our time and energy doing what seems to be nothing? There's really nothing fruitful that comes out of this. The other option, which is less rosy, but in my eyes still isn't impossible. Because I'm as a red pilled individual, I'm aware of a lot of all the CIA's bullshit that they've done throughout history, and I'm sure there's many programs and things that they've done that I don't know of. But even the ones I am privy to have proved me enough that there really is no limit to the bowels that intelligence or government agencies will reach to to do their end. So on the conspiratorial end of the spectrum, we have the brain rot videos that are being pushed by the big tech platforms are literal like psychological warfare, probably intended to either inundate or otherwise kind of castrate the public's ability to recognize truth from fiction, and then ultimately result in people that are either unwilling or unable to, or really you're unable to discern what is truth from false, which is already a difficult concept in and of itself. Like if you try to tell somebody anything that is true or is false, I guess being the person that I am would say, well, I don't even know what do you consider the metrics of a true statement versus a false statement? How do you conclude if something is indeed true or indeed false? Because nobody is versed in the ability to, hunt down sources and really get to the bottom of things, right? It's like, well, the New York Times wouldn't lie to me. It's like anyone that doesn't believe that journalists or have any shred of legitimacy left is a complete clown. So then, all right, well, then now if we can't trust, kind of these long-lived journalist institutions or the government, who are we to trust? It's like, okay, well, you can kind of trust yourself, or I guess maybe it's, some vague group of scientists that have been, funded by a giant company to do something. So ultimately, it's like almost the most rational place to end up is like, well, I don't believe anything, actually. Which, again, ironically enough, is a highly, highly dangerous like worldview to have. I think nihilism, as I've argued before in blogs and in videos, I think is it eventually leads to a suicidal attitude. Like, well, nothing I think is true. Nothing is valuable inherently. Everything is subjective. There's kind of moral subjectivity. There's cultural relativity. There's nothing. We can't rank any one thing above the other. Nothing matters. There is no purpose to any of this. It's all meaningless. Which honestly might be the end goal psyop of a lot of this brain rot technology, is to kind of to trivialize, whatever is left of a true or a good existence. Which again, the total answer to this is just to get off of the internet and to stop watching it, to stop doing it, stop engaging with it. And I guess to get back to my main point of the people or the types of thoughts that frustrate me. So, well, people say, well, I'm aware of my bias and I'm aware that this is bad for me. I'm aware that this is, dangerous and whatever. I'm like, okay, so what? It's like you can still be, to give an example, you can be aware that texting and driving is dangerous and could result in a death. Being aware of that fact doesn't make you a better texter and driver. It doesn't help you on the road to know that texting and driving is dangerous. Awareness of that fact, everyone is aware of that. Nobody needs to not, everyone understands that. But people still text and drive, and that still results in people dying from car accidents. Which in this case, you might have a Darwinist be like, oh, good. If they're stupid enough to text and drive, they deserve to die, which is not a position that I'm open to defending. But regardless, for sake of argument, that is essentially what I hear when people say, well, I'm aware of my bias, so it can't hurt me. The only awareness doesn't help you in this scenario. The only thing that does help is legitimate action against what the awareness is trying to promote. So, for example, Don't Text and Drive is trying to promote the awareness of texting and driving is dangerous, such that you put your phone away while you're driving so that you're safer. So if the action you took from this quote unquote awareness that you've gained about texting and driving was putting your phone in the trunk while you drive, then I would say, yes, you've actually done the correct thing. And you now will be a safer driver because your phone's in the trunk and you can't use it. But being aware that there's, texting and driving is bad for you doesn't help you. So in the same way, it's like, well, I'm aware that my phone is just serving me propaganda or ads or just porn or really anything to pull me away from what is real life. So really anything outside of the phone. Because, really everything that you see on the phone is not real. It's real in the sense that you could purchase something off of Amazon and get it a few days later. But there isn't really the videos you see about people, the news that you see about what's going on in the world. It might have some semblance of truth, but not only that, like you're not able to discern any valid or useful truth from that, given how skewed the incentives are towards attention and away from what the more moralistic ideals of journalism or knowledge. And even so, even if you did get the information about the wars in other countries, what would that even would that have anything to do with you? Would that even help you at all? Like even the things that I would say are like, oh, this is actually a good piece of information people understand, like, hey, don't text and drive. That doesn't help. Nobody changes their behavior based off of that. So it's not even like the videos and the things that you inundate yourself with every day actually have any impact on your behavior, because they don't. All they do is just give you a longer list of things that you won't accomplish or won't do because you're lazy and you lack the initiative to actually do anything. So it's like, oh, I've saved 48 recipes on a keto diet. It's like, okay, well, have you gone on the keto? Well, no, but I am, when I'm ready to. It's like, okay, well, you've then literally accomplished nothing. It's like you have this veneer that you've collected all this knowledge and it's somehow going to be useful in some way. But it's the stuff on the internet is fucking useless. Like unless you're actually going to do anything with it, it is fucking useless. And my argument isn't to say that you should get off the internet because there's nothing there for you. The argument is you're not strong-willed enough to be able to use it. And I'm including myself in that category. To think like the hubris that you have to think that you, one little meat person whose brain is a biased machine, can somehow outsmart or outwit or whatever quite literally trillions of dollars of surveillance technology. If you think you stand even a chance of somehow getting the upper hand in that arrangement, you are a retard. And there's really nothing I can do to save you from that, because there is like I just don't see how you can rationalize your way out of that given that fact. But I think people tend to overestimate their ability to discern like truth from fiction. But I think that may be true when something is happening in front of them, or even when they're arguing with a relative during a holiday or something like that. But when it's technology that we're speaking about, you're hopeless, and there's quite literally no way you're going to be able to tell truth from fiction. And even if you could, it's like you're not in control of what is being served to you, so you don't even get to decide what to decide is truth or fiction about what you see, because you don't get to decide what you see. You've already sacrificed that right to the platform that you're on that's serving you the information. The only, again, the way that I consume information, the base way, which is still like subject to like intense scrutiny and bias, because it isn't getting the only true really red pill is just getting off the internet, period, but would be use an RSS feed of people that for whatever reason you actually trust, which again, that still introduces some biases and some issues and an echo chamber in its own right. But at the very least, the amount of information that is being projected into your eyeballs is metered by the speed at which people actually upload content, the people that you have and the number of people that you can realistically follow. But when it comes to open-ended algorithms that just decide to serve things based off of what is popular or what is being seen by other people, again, which is the rosy side of things, the more ulterior way to frame that is whatever the CIA wants you to do. Because it's silly to me that people think that like the government has stopped doing shitty things. It's like even that, it's like even people that accept that the government do shitty things think it's like, oh well, like Apple wouldn't work with the government to like do things, or well, Google, they wouldn't do that. It's like they're separate. It's like, what do you think actually, like, where do you think this stuff comes from? Like, I don't even in what perspective is that? Do you actually think that is like a defensible position, or do you think that that's like a smart or even reasonable position to have? I think the reasonable position is to adopt, in the realm of technology, a philosophy of like pure skepticism. Assume everything is ulterior until proven otherwise, which you can't really prove otherwise. So again, you almost have to assume everything is is ulterior. And the other kind of problem that I've that everyone kind of sees with a lot of technology is people then point to regulation as kind of the answer to this, and which again is a lesson that people just somehow can't learn. It's like you're not regulating this technology. Have you not noticed it doesn't work? It's not impossible. I mean, technologically, it is impossible in some ways, only because the machines aren't centralized. It's not like every computer goes to talk to Google first, which is what Google and Facebook and Apple want. But regardless, they can be set up as peer-to-peer systems. So the idea that you can somehow stomp out or enforce like ID verification on things is comical, because anyone that knows what they're doing is going to get around it. And if the idea is to like then create a deterrent, it's like a deterrent from what? And like a deterrent from who to whose benefit? Like, so, for example, if we're going to take the example of online pornography and ID verification checks for those, the concept being like, as well, kids shouldn't be online watching porn. Okay, I agree. It's too easy for kids to get online and watch porn. Okay, I still agree with that. The answer is to mandate ID verification scans on every porn website. No, you lost me. Okay, because it's like, what do you think? There's like 2 websites. There's quite literally thousands of websites that serve things even far worse than porn. Porn might even be like the most PG-13 thing you can find on some of on the internet. I mean, if we're going to include the dark web, I mean, you have to be an idiot to think that you can somehow like, oh, just pick like the top. Even then, it's like, all right, fine, we'll somehow get around, a lot, the top, we'll say the 60% of traffic that goes to these, four main sites, like whatever. Even then, it's like, okay, then now you're just kind of filtering for kids that don't know how to use VPNs or don't really understand how the internet works. And then it's like, B, it's like, okay, then like you're almost kind of promoting degeneracy or like computer hacking in a way. And is then the answer then to like crack down on VPN usage? Because that'll be next. What happens is like, well, these ID scans aren't working. Like kids are still, buying drugs online and watching porn. It's like, okay, so what's the answer now? Oh, well, here's another government overreach. Let's instead like try to ban VPN technologies. Again, why do you honestly think that's going to work? Truly. Like, I mean, have you thought about this not at all? And I realize I'm just complaining that old people don't understand technology, and that's kind of like, that's been said 1,000 times already, but I still feel like it bears repeating to the layman that doesn't understand technology, but at least understands that regulation is a stupid answer. I'm not saying regulation is never the answer to anything. I think there are times and places where it could be acceptable, but to regulate computer technologies or communication technologies, I think is comical. And every person who knows anything about IT, or I mean, even like your cable guy is probably like, yeah, it just doesn't work that way, and there's just no way to do that. The other kind of overarching problem with this is that we're kind of shifting responsibility of child rearing away from like individuals and their own philosophies and religions and things to then like more of a religion of the state or a philosophy of the state where parents themselves aren't, even like gun laws. It's like where, maybe not guns, but really anything else. But we're shifting that away from parents having, kind of sole discretion and responsibility. It's a parent's responsibility to not have, feral children running around biting people, to then now kind of shifting that burden onto the government. Partly which, due to the fact that both parents can, we've moved away from this, the atomic structure where you'd have two parents and, one's at home and the other one's working. Now because of the economy and whatnot, that's not really a realistic thing for most people. So now you have both parents away, and then you have to pay for childcare, and then someone else is responsible for raising your kids, and ultimately that ends up being an iPad, which we're going to see the downstream effects of that, which I'm actually not as black-pilled on, only because I feel like the proverbial pendulum will swing back at some point. And I think, maybe my generation at least, so this Generation Z, will take a much stricter, harder stance than a lot of the millennials and Gen X's that raise their kids on technology. If we even ever get to that point, like if I ever even have the ability to even raise a child, even hypothetically. So if you're someone like me, or in my age group that is raising a child, I feel like you'll have a much more nuanced understanding of the technology, and probably won't be as bad with giving your children access to it. The issue will be kind of this Gen Alpha. I'm not sure. I'm actually very curious to see how like a lot of these kids end up. Not only like physically, I want to know like what do they look like? Like do they have like curved necks and sullen eyes and kind of one big arm that they've masturbated with, and the other arm is kind of weakly, to their side. I'm interested in the actual, like, kind of the physical, averages of this Gen Alpha from, their excessive screen time, and also like their intellectual beliefs. I feel like a lot of them, where a lot of Zoomers were kind of sad and almost ashamed to kind of embrace nihilism, and they kind of embraced nihilism as a last resort, after kind of trying everything, after kind of, trying the grind set that didn't work, and then, you go to looks maxing, and then you figure out you're ugly, and then, many different things that like don't end up working, and then you kind of resort finally to like nihilism. I think Gen Alpha was just kind of tossed in, and within 10 minutes they're like, oh yeah, this is all bullshit, none of this matters, life is meaningless, yada yada yada, which again I've said 1,000 times is a very dangerous mindset. But I'm curious to see where that actually takes them, in terms of their everyday life. Like I'd be very curious to see what a 40-year-old Gen Alpha, a 40-year-old raised on TikTok, looks like. I think it was a genuine curiosity to me. But yeah, I'm jumping around a lot just because I haven't done this in a while. But yeah. I suppose in terms of what you should do or what I strive to do, because as much as I can sit here and complain about things, I do like to be more solution focused than I do like to highlight problems that I think or potential problems or just areas of concern, maybe not even problems. But I also trying to think about what are the practical things that you could do to actually solve or at least perturb those problems from having a negative impact on your life. So, I mean, for all this phone conversation, the internet, the answer is quite simple. Literally, the smallest amount possible you can use the internet, the better. Now, I'm not, on one extreme side of me, I'm just like, well, throw the phone in the river and go live in the woods. But I realize that for many, that's not really a practical or a helpful suggestion. So then the suggestion is, okay, how can you use it as little as possible? Are there little devices? I mean, I even think about buying a separate GPS for your car, just so you don't have to use your phone to do it. Having a separate little device that you can use for, texting. And I mean, I don't know. There's many different ways around this, but it's you have to make very, very small steps, and it takes a lot of sacrifice. But ultimately, the less internet you can use, the better. And this goes doubly for like entertaining yourself or your idle time. I think that should be as far away from the internet as possible. Ideally, something that involves touching grass, or at the very least being outside, or at least beyond that, interacting with another person. So even if it's just like your hobby is just, harassing your friends on the phone and talking to them about God knows what, that's still better than being on the internet. Besides that, reading books or any kind of solitary activity, developing skills, those are all positive things that I would defend. But beyond that, I do try to think about how else I would like to spend my time. And I think more people should strive to spend their time doing what I call kind of these like peak human activities. So they're activities that I consider to be like the most human of activities, meaning that like artificial intelligence systems or ML, they're not easily done by robots or even by other animals or even by nature itself. Like it's things that are specifically human. I'm not meaning like digesting a Big Mac, even though that probably is something only a human could do, because I'm pretty sure that would kill every other animal that would eat that. I mean, someone should probably try that. Just trying to feed like an ape or something, like a classic American diet, and just see what happens to those. Because it's strange how well we feed our pets. It's like, oh, well, pets need this like perfect macronutrient ratio. And then like when it comes to feeding ourselves, it's like we don't even, is anyone even counting the macronutrients? What is this? Like we give this chimpanzee or these rabbits like this perfect, like exactly what their nutrition and digestive systems need to be healthy. But then when it comes to our own health, it's like, well, fuck it, we're just gonna we ball or whatever. It's like that. What the fuck is this? That's so stupid. Regardless, I want people to spend more time engaged in peak human activities. So a few of those, just if you want examples. I put like sport as being one. This could be sport with the physical body, which is mostly what I'm referring to, but also I'll even include like art. So you could say like dance is kind of a an art sport hybrid, and more a literal like art thing would be like painting or any kind of creating a basket of some kind even is art or craftsmanship. Another would be purely human. I would say would be philosophizing. Now, the one caveat with this being that we could argue, well, LLMs can like philosophize about things, and I don't actually think that they can. I don't think that they, while you can have an LLM reprompting itself to ask the same questions, it ultimately doesn't have. I won't say it doesn't have the extent of memory that we do, but its memory doesn't function in the same way that ours does. Now, the caveat with that being we don't really understand how our memory works. We don't know why certain things we can't remember and certain things we can. I mean, you could make like this neural argument strength pathway thing, but ultimately that argument I don't really think is that strong either. about like, well, these neural pathways are weaker than the other ones, and you've atrophied these pathways, therefore. But it's like, I mean, there's things that you remember that just pop into your head that you're like, why the fuck did I remember that? It's like, oh yeah, I guess that did actually happen. And there's no, I think even post rationalizing this, synapse strength theory, it doesn't make any sense. It's like I think if you conclusively can say why we remember some things and not others, you're a liar and an idiot. So I don't really trust that. Um, so I think in order to philosophize, you almost requires a human's memory, and I'll even say like patterns of thinking. So I'm not saying LLMs can't think outside of the box or generate new ideas, but they can't really assess the utility, or they can't test those those ideas in the real world because they don't exist in the real world. Like they themselves, like the bot is not able to interact with the world. So suppose like I come up with a new philosophy on I don't know, let's just as an example, like people interacting with each other. So like a social philosophy about the give and take of a conversation or something like that. I could have this philosophical idea and walk around and talk to people and kind of test it out, see how, I think this relates, and maybe it's maybe it kind of works, maybe it kind of doesn't. I don't know. I could kind of, ballpark test my theory on other humans and kind of refine and things. Because an LLM can't really interact with the world, all it can do is just say something, and then a human would then have to decide, well, does this actually function? Does this actually do anything in the real world? How practical is this beyond this scope? Is this a real philosophy? Is this just something they made up? And you could argue that, like, well, humans are bad at generating philosophies, but nonetheless, we can still actually do things. We can actually still philosophize because we exist in the real world and have some ability to kind of to A/B test or to otherwise put our ideas to scrutiny, whereas an LLM can only ever just generate something. Now, the other part of that would be like, well, if well, what if it's like an OpenClaw bot that can actually interact? And I don't count interacting with remote servers as human interaction either. Like the very fact that we can also type things into a terminal doesn't mean that isn't like a human activity. You notice that I'm not including typing on a computer as a human activity because it's not. That isn't a purely human activity. And and even if we have like a robot that exists like in the real world, I still think they're a long, long way away from actually being able to like have what one might call a philosophical thought, and then B, kind of be able to test and apply that philosophical thought in a manner that is uniquely human. Now, it can emulate a human doing that. Like I'm sure somebody could program a robot to think about philosophical thoughts and then walk around and talk to people or observe. But I don't think that an LLM can passively observe the world, its sights, its sounds, its smells, in the same way, fundamentally, that a human can. So I put philosophizing in the category of, you know, purely human activities that humans can do, kind of the peak of human activities. The other I put in there was like wit and just being funny, which again, I'm not saying that robots or other animals can't be funny. I mean, there's animals and babies that do things that are funny, but I think there is still another human element that we're missing with all of this. There's arguments to go down each of these rabbit holes, so I'm not going to defend any one of these claims that much. That's not really the point of this. The point of this was to point out some activities that you could try to engage in, to not be on the internet as much. But wit being one of those two. So far I have like sport, I have art, I have wit, I have philosophizing, and you could pick different words for these if you don't like those. And the next one I put is socializing with other, like I said, just desirables. And this is not like a eugenics thing. I'm not talking about a desirable person versus an undesirable. I just mean desirables mean that people that you desire either something from or something about them. So if I try to think about the people that I like versus the people that I don't like, the people that I like, there is something about them or something that they've done or something that they are that in some way I desire. It's like I wish I had that guy's like sense of humor. I wish I had his positive attitude. I wish I was, as tall as this guy or whatever. Either way, like you desire something from the other person. That, desire may be as simple as just this person is desirable because they are the same family as me and they grew up, and this is my mother, and she raised me, and in that way she's desirable to me because there's a historical connection between us. Regardless, like I think everyone that I like has some desirable quality, and people I spend time with have qualities that I desire, in an abstract sense, not not in a lustful way or anything, just in the sense that I, even like a baby, I desire that, that cuteness or that ability to, that naivety almost is a desirable trait. So it's not even like it has to be any kind of concrete thing that you want, or it can be, as ethereal as anything. But ultimately, socializing, with as I say, with other desirables is another, I'll say uniquely human thing. The next I have on here, I guess that was it actually. So that yeah, that is I guess that's kind of it. But it's just a running list. I'm sure there is plenty more of like purely human activities, but I would like to spend the majority of my day doing these as possible. Now, you notice I didn't really put like hygiene or anything else on here, or like eating. Because we're not the only species and things that eats, or really engages in sport or laughing or things. But I just mean like, to the human's degree. Like I think chimpanzees eat in the same way that we eat. Like we just shove it down our gullet. That's pretty simple. But I think you'd be hard pressed to argue that chimpanzees, philosophize in the same way that we do, fundamentally, or maybe fundamentally yes, but not like in actuality. Like they're not as advanced. They just don't. Same with some rare bird. I'm sure that they tell jokes to each other or something like that. But I think there is some kind of discernible, significant difference between the jokes that these birds are telling back and forth and a stand-up comedy routine. I feel like that's still a very human thing and not not that. But and I don't know. There's all arguments about AI with all of that, but I just felt like that was a good thing to share. I guess one thing going back to like children and having kids is I understood on one level when people would say, "Well, I just want the best for my kids. I just want whatever's best for my kids." Which again, I totally understand that. But in many ways, that almost sounds kind of self-sacrificial in the sense that why would you want something like people that want the best for their kids often sacrifice their own well-being, which is kind of a as a product of having kids. I think that's one of the things that happens is if you have kids, you ultimately kind of put their well-being and above yours, which is good, I think. But I think many parents unfortunately put like they want the best for their kids, but they don't even want their best, and not the best for them because that's not always like what's best for everybody. But they don't bring their best to the table, but yet they expect and want the best out of their kids. So it's like an example would be, well, I want to give my kids opportunities that I never had, which again on one practical level is very real. But I feel like I often see a lot of parents that quite literally have had as many opportunities, if not more opportunities than what they've given their kids, and they didn't do anything with them. Like all they did was just start having kids and then kind of give them the same opportunities. But it's like, well, you didn't really take any opportunities. Like what are these opportunities that you are trying to give your kids, like to get a job and I guess have a family of their own? I guess it is kind of a loop in that sense where like, why do you want the best for your kids? Oh, so they can have the best for their kids, and they can have the best for their kids, and they can have the best for their kids. So there is kind of a heritage argument, which, I think is valid to some degree, but I do feel like a lot of parents haven't like earned their own, they haven't like earned their own respect in some way. Like they almost have kids as like an admission that they couldn't hack it, or they didn't do the most with what they had, and they had, they kind of squandered opportunities or weren't given opportunities or didn't, weren't able to capitalize on whatever, meager opportunities that they did have, whatever it might be. But then that's kind of almost an admission that, well, that they're going to have opportunities and do things that I couldn't do, only for their kids to kind of turn around and do the exact same thing. But I feel like before you have kids, the priority should be, well, if I'm going to eventually be someone that has kids, I want to be someone that, my kids can look up to, and someone that has at least done something noteworthy, such that my kids aren't like, well, why the fuck would I want to be like that guy? He didn't really do anything. And there's something to be said for people that have, tragic lives and, bad things happen to you. They get sick, they spouse dies or, whatever. There are many excuses that, and I'll, put that in quotes, excuses that people have for, for not doing one thing or not being able to do something. And instead, kind of for one way or the other, having to have their kids do that. But I feel like if you're a parent and you're going to be a parent, you at the very least have to have been able to say that, like, well, I did something, I kind of achieved what I set out to achieve with, my life or my career or whatever it was that I sacrificed in lieu of having kids. I don't know that like having kids can absolve you from, again, wanting the best for yourself. It's like you still should want your best because, that's what you're trying to give your kids. So why would you want your kids to have the best but not you? Or you're not the best for you, but your best, like you being the best version of yourself. So I don't know. I just felt like that was a little cop out related to the excuses. I think there is a very important distinction that we should make between excuses and reasons. So I'm in favor of using reasons to defend things. It's like, why were you late to work today? It's like, well, my car broke down, and like that could be seen as an excuse or a reason. That's kind of a gray area. I suppose a better example of a reason is like actually I don't even think I kind of forgot where I was talking about with this, but either way, I think there is a notable difference between excuses and reasons, being that people tend to conflate excuses to be valid reasons when there are just excuses. Like I think excuses are lazy. I think people know excuses when you hear one. It's not really it's not a good mode of living to, be generating excuses for why you can't. So like a better example would be like, oh, why didn't you work out today? A reason would be like, well, I worked out the last 3 days. I'm trying to give myself a break because I don't want to get overworked. That's a good reason. That's not really an excuse, I would say. But the other, on the other side of that, it's like, well, why didn't you work out today? Oh, well, you see, like I woke up late and then, I had to go to this other thing. And then those are all excuses. Like those aren't, the reason is you didn't want to. You didn't prioritize it. It wasn't important to you. And you just didn't do it. That's, you're making excuses now. Reasons are not, I don't know. I just feel like there's always a big difference between an excuse and a reason to do something. I had a better argument for this at one point, but it seemed to have escaped me. So I'll just move on to something else. One thought I had a while ago, which I guess all these are thoughts I've had a while ago since I've let this list pile up for a while, is do we talk just to prove that we are thinking about something? It's like because I've spent, I think the longest I've gone without like opening my mouth to not eat. So the longest I've gone without like talking at all, it's probably been like 2 days, I would say. But even that, at some point, it still gets kind of itchy, and you have a need to talk or a need to, use your vocal cords for something. And I almost wonder, like, why is it that we have this? Why do we need to talk? Why are we not just like a silent species? And I know there's some cultures and people that are much more silent than others, but in general, I feel like we all have some need to share and to do something, and there's some social, kind of drive that we have. But I almost wonder if we talk just to prove to others that we are thinking about things, and we don't just kind of mindlessly live our lives. It's like almost if I didn't speak my mind and I didn't say things, people kind of assume that my mind is empty and there's nothing going on, which I guess is a valid complaint, I suppose, or a valid excuse or reason. I suppose a valid reason, probably not excuse. Valid reason for talking is to prove that we are indeed thinking about something. Otherwise, we wouldn't really know whether or not we're, using our brains or are using the knowledge that we have. I guess let me actually go to my list here for once. This is kind of a stupid quip, but I just said that programming used to be like it went from an Adderall job to a weed job. Meaning that I feel like the good programmers used to be, stimmed out and kind of grinding for hours and hours and hours, writing code, writing tens of thousands of lines. And now kind of the best programmers are just like these vibe coders that, kind of lay back, smoke a joint, and code up a copy of Google or whatever, in an afternoon. But I just kind of thought that was a funny quip. Here's another kind of bucketism, I suppose. If your job is easy, like if you have an easy job, your hobbies should be difficult, and vice versa. And very few people's jobs are actually difficult. So if you're not sure what your job falls into, it's an easy job, and your hobbies need to be hard. If you have a hard job, you probably know it, or are too stupid not to talk yourself out of it. And I'm not going to go into lists and or examples of what hard jobs actually are, but regardless, you know yourself. You should know yourself at least. But yeah, I think if you have a difficult job, your hobbies can be easy, or and I think often people with difficult jobs still take on difficult hobbies because that's the kind of people that they are. Is they're people that want to do difficult things. So that's just kind of in their nature. But if your job is easy, I feel like you should engage in more difficult, time-consuming, and/or like focused hobbies. And this comes around too with everything, and this always frustrates me is people that like say that, well, I just can't focus, or like I don't have discipline or anything. Anytime I hear that, it's a lack of skill development. Like I think almost nobody is just planted on earth with like the David Goggins discipline to run 1,000 miles. Like if you've actually ever heard that guy's story, it's not. He was born, David Goggins. He was born a fat like loser, and he essentially like hated himself so much that he then became David Goggins, which is a totally different arc than just like having discipline or not. It's a very obvious and kind of simply dumb story about the very simple fact that discipline is very much a skill, and same with focus. It's like I've kind of struggled with focus my whole life, and finding different things to complain about, or whatever, ADHD, or trying to write down lists of things. It's been something that it's bothered me, but after kind of developing it for some time, I truly believe more and more that it is not. There are genetic dispositions to be better or worse at things. In the same way, it's like, if you're taller or shorter, you're going to be better or worse at basketball, or if you're huge, you're going to be better at football or whatever. Like that, sure, you have like a natural propensity to things, but the idea that it's even easier than like trying to become a basketball player or a football player. This doesn't even require any of that. It just requires like some basic structure, and then like a plan, and just sticking to like a plan, and like trying to enforce the plan on yourself, which I realize is easier said than done, but it happens one small step at a time. Like the idea that you can just like have all these things to change about your life and then just like 180. And I actually see these people a lot where they have all of these great ideas on things that they need to do. Like, oh, I want to start eating better. I want to start going to the gym. I want to start reading books. I want to start doing yoga. And it's like, okay, these are all great things. How are you going to go about doing that? It's like, well, I'll start tomorrow. And I go, what? I'm going to start tomorrow. I'm going to start what tomorrow? All of it. I'm like, really? You're gonna start doing like 40 different things all at once, and you think that's gonna work somehow? Really? You're gonna go from laying in bed for 8 hours a day to instead like doing yoga, reading, exercising, cooking, and eating. Like, are you an idiot? Like, how do you think that's even gonna work? It's like, do you honestly think you can roll out of bed and 180 your entire life? And some people do, and they can, but like to expect that is moronic. That's like expecting to like accidentally build a rocket ship out of Legos by, dumping a Legos pack on the ground. That's just not going to fucking happen. Like you have to do one thing, one small baby step at a time. Like the only realistic like cop out I can think of with that is like, okay, I'm going to do 5 minutes of each. Okay, I'm going to do 5 minutes of yoga, 5 minutes of reading, 5 minutes of lifting, like whatever. Like that's at least still like, okay, that's more reasonable, but still like I think a ridiculous commitment. Like you need to commit to tiny, tiny, tiny things at first, and then slowly over a long like years build up the ability to actually implement changes. And what you'll find, like after implementing a few different changes, and this is mostly from my personal anecdotal experience of, reading more and meditating and stretching and many of the different habits and things that I've come about doing is that it takes a time. It takes a long time. It takes like 5, sometimes even 10 years to actually develop a habit into something that sticks. And even once you think you've gotten a habit into doing something, like you will lose it and you'll lose it again, but then you have to re-find it and come back to it, bring it back into your life. And, because because things get busy and you forget stuff and, it's impossible to have a habit that sticks one off. But the idea that you're going to roll out of bed and all of a sudden be Superman, it's like you're an idiot. I don't know why did you think that was going to work? So habits and things change very slowly and incrementally. Like you're almost have to undo and rewire your entire fucked up brain. And what's not helping is consuming a bunch of mindless content about why stretching for 4 hours a day is good for you, or why yoga is the next big alt-right thing, or I don't even know. It's like you're just watching these pointless videos on crap and you're like archiving this stuff that is never going to be like useful anywhere. And I say this out of compassion that I was someone that used to archive all this crap. I used to like archive these books and things. I'm never going to fucking read them. Like I'm never going to do any of that. It's like, okay, well, if I want to do any of these habits and things that I think are so valuable, you have to actually take the first step. And you have to do that a little bit at a time. It's like I'm not going to do it all at once. And actually, having said that, so I still have this whole archive of, because I read physical books. I don't like digital texts as much, only because I don't like staring at the screen. And then I don't really have an ideal reading device. Like a book is kind of ideal for reading. Like it's not, you can kind of read it in any orientation, doesn't require a battery. It's, you can, where you left off. It's very simple. But like, I don't want to read on a phone because it's almost too small and it's cumbersome. And then like you can do like a swiping for things, but then the phone doesn't know whether you're swiping to go back to the home screen or I don't want to read on my fucking phone. And then like a computer's even stranger because it's like, of all the things I'm going to do on a computer, I'm going to read a book. It's like, what's the point of books now? Like, I'm not going to sit at a computer and read a book. I'm usually going to do computer stuff on the computer because that's kind of the point of it. Well, anyway, I have all these old books and things, and a lot of them are articles, not really full books, that I've archived. And I actually have gone back and started reading some of them. Now, I have probably like 150, and I've only made it through like 6. So, I say that as a mark of pride, as if I've done something, but I still really haven't made a dent in what I eventually intend to. But nonetheless, it still is, it's one at a time that you actually have to do this. Like I'm not going to undo, all of this in 5 minutes. And same with like, one other thing I would like to undo about my current setup is I have all these like little vomited thoughts and haikus. And a lot of times I try to bring them to this video game therapy series. So just I can kind of say that I talked about them and like, all right, this idea I've espoused, it's over. I don't have to go back to it. But many ideas I really feel deserve like a long look. And usually those I put like on my kind of blog draft list kind of thing, where I have like all this big long text document of all these ideas I have for different blogs, for different topics and things that I want to go into. Well, that list has ballooned to, I think collectively, if you count all the different files, like 800 or something lines. So it's usually I double space, so it's usually about 400 single lines of something that is an idea that I want to explore more. And if you look at my blog, you know that I don't even have 400 posts, so it's not like I'm going to somehow clean out that document. But I do think efforts like what's the first step in doing that? It's okay. Well, can I consolidate the ideas I have? Are there ideas that I've talked about, incidentally, or the ones that I can mark off from this because I'm no longer interested or no longer think that this is actually as profound as I think it was at one point? And this is the other thing, is like, I don't know if it's just my brain with sometimes, is I'll like read something or I'll read something, I'll think of something and I'll go, wow, that actually is like, very applicable and profound. Like I need to kind of espouse on that idea. And then like, I'll look back at it later. I'm like, I don't know where this magic was the first time I read this, because it's not, or the first time I thought of this, because it's not really, I don't get what I was so hyped up about when I read this. But then I'm also like, well, I should trust myself and know that I kind of archived this and put this idea down for a reason. Like why else would I have gone through the effort to, like write this down and then, write it down on my phone, and later I'd come back to my phone and translate it from my phone to my computer if I wasn't going to eventually write something on it. So then there's almost this sunk cost fallacy of like, well, I've wasted probably 10 minutes on this like nucleus of an idea that, I think has potential, at least on some level. But, now what do I do with it? It's like, I'm not excited about it. what I should have done is at the very moment I had the idea and I was excited about it, I should have written the full blog then. Like now, I should have just stopped, completed it, done, and then never had to archive or move it around and waste all my time with this other stuff. But the problem is like I can't control when I think of certain things that, some of which are actually important to me and I think, have philosophical value, for whatever that means. But I can't control when those thoughts come. So then it's like whenever they do come, I kind of just have to like, all right, well, I got to write this down for later. And then who knows whether I'll be able to find the same headspace or even a similar enough headspace to be able to espouse the idea. And sometimes I'll even take it in a totally different direction. And I'm like, well, there still is actually an idea here that I want to espouse on, but I can't now because I could, but it's going to require the same post in a different direction now, with the same kind of thesis, but, taken in a different light because I can't really, I then also can't control how I'll interpret that, that little haiku later on because, of course, it's not the same. Regardless, I feel like my strategy with this will be, one, to kind of consolidate ideas and then, at some point get into, because I go through phases of prolific writing and prolific whatever. I'm very much a streaky person. It's almost like, it's how I play basketball. I'm a high volume shooter. I shoot a lot, and I'll miss a lot. I'll miss 4 times in a row, but then at some point I'll make 8, and it's like, all right, well now it evens out. Same with all of this. I feel like there's times where I'll make one of these videos every day for like a week, and it's like, oh my god, he's like really pumping these out. But then I won't make one for 3 weeks. So it's not like I'm not gonna eventually get around to doing it. Like I will. I'm just not like the kind of the slog of every single day I can do all these different things is more. I feel like I expect more of myself than I can actually do. So I'm trying to get more in line with my like streaky self in the sense like, all right, what are things that cannot be streaky? Like I can't be streaky on lifting. I'm not streaky on lifting. I can't be streaky on my meditation. I can't be streaky on that. I'm not really streaky on that. But other things I can probably be more streaky on, like these videos, like my writing, I can probably be more streaky on. The joke telling and stuff that I've been doing, I can be more streaky on that. That's not that important. Because I'm trying to pick my battles here on what I actually need to not be streaky on and what I can kind of let myself do whatever. Either way, these are all problems for me and not for thee. So thanks for watching. Peace out. I'll see you in the next one. If I can actually get over there.